welcome to If Guitars Could Speak, the documentary series where we look at a famous musician, piece of gear, or moment in music history. For today's episode, we thought it would be fun to change it up and look at a guitar that was almost famous. Today, we're going to examine a 1952 Gibson Les Paul that was briefly owned by none other than a bona fide founding father of rock and roll, Mr. Buddy Holly. But before we get into it, please be sure to like this video by hitting the thumbs up button below and consider subscribing to the Guitar Historian channel if you want to see more content like this. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the guitar that was almost famous, Buddy Holly's 1952 Gibson Les Paul. Many people would be surprised that Holly owned a Gibson Les Paul. He would become famous as an early owner of the Stratocaster and become one of the icons who would make the new Fender model a sought-after axe by guitarists worldwide. The jangly, clear, bell-like tones of the Strat would come to define Holly's driving rhythm sound on his many hits like That'll Be the Day, Oh Boy, It's So Easy, and Peggy Sue. But in late 1954, a young Buddy walked into a music store in his hometown of Lubbock, Texas, to buy his first real guitar, interested in pursuing a career in music. The Adair Music Company, run by B.E. Adair, would sell Holly a 1952 Gibson Les Paul along with a matching amplifier, the Les Paul G variant. Emblazoned with a script LP matching the silkscreen signature of Les Paul on the headstock, the pair was a spiffy combo, and the cash register took $305 of Holly's hard-earned money that day, the modern equivalent of almost $3,000. Holly would play the Les Paul at many shows at high schools in the Lubbock area with his earliest act, Buddy and Bob, with his friend Bob Montgomery. But Buddy would start to have issues with the guitar, as so many other players also did with the first iteration of the Les Paul Gold Top. As we now know, Gibson got the neck angle completely wrong, making the action high and forcing players to wrap the strings underneath the trapeze tailpiece. This eliminated the ability to palm mute the strings. The earliest Les Pauls shipped with no serial numbers, no poker chip rhythm treble switch protector, no fretboard binding, and unwieldy super high top hat knobs that many players would swap out. Gibson rushed to make improvements to the 1953 model, fixing the neck angle and ditching the trapeze tailpiece for a simple wraparound stop bar that most guitarists found much more playable. But Buddy's biggest complaint about the guitar was the weight. Early Les Pauls could weigh as much as 10 pounds, which, for long sets, often was a pain on the shoulder. Holly came back into Adair's shop a few months later, dragging his guitar and amp back into the store with a request of the owner. Buddy had had a lesson with Lubbock's Clyde Hankins at the shop a few days earlier, and Hankins had procured one of the earliest production models of the brand new Fender Stratocaster. He was awed by the absolutely futuristic look of the double cutaway and the contoured body, and he was struck by the twangy clear tones that the Strat provided. The Stratocaster also had a 6-piece tailpiece, allowing for perfect intonation of each string precisely. Buddy was hooked. He would trade Adair the Les Paul for a 1954 Fender Strat in vintage sunburst finish, the guitar that he would go on to make famous with his appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1957. Today, we can't picture Buddy with anything else in his hands but that Strat. But what became of the 1952 Les Paul? Well, a classmate of Buddy's named Sam Logan's parents were looking for a graduation present for the Texan teenager, and they walked into Adair's shop in the spring of 1955 and bought the set for a discounted used price of $225, still well over $2,000 of today's money. Quite a graduation present. It would be some time before Logan would realize that the name scrawled into the speaker magnet in the back of the Les Paul amp was that of Buddy Holly, spelled in Holly's correct spelling of Holley before the record labels butchered it. Otherwise, he may never have known the famous previous owner of the set. Eventually, Logan would sell the guitar to the Buddy Holly Educational Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to preserving Buddy's legacy for future generations. The foundation then loaned the guitar to Lubbock's Buddy Holly Center, bringing it full circle. It now resides in Lubbock at the Buddy Holly Museum. I think we can all agree that Buddy Holly just wouldn't have looked right with a Les Paul, but who knows what would have happened to the Stratocaster had he not played one on that fateful night of December 1st, 1957. It was many musicians' first look at the Stratocaster, and it is that appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show that is often credited as the start of the world's love affair with the unmistakable Fender model. Buddy would go on to a prolific career behind his Fender Strat, but we all know that his career and life were cut tragically short in a plane crash shortly before 1 a.m. on February 3rd, 1959. Buddy was only 22 years old. But his legacy lived on in his unbelievable discography of amazing songs. Although Holly's career was brief, his catalog of songs would go on to inspire nearly every rock and roller to come after him, not the least of which were two young songwriters from Liverpool who even would name their band in an insect theme as a nod to Buddy's backing band, the Crickets. As it is, we had Buddy on a Stratocaster, and that was more than enough. In the end, I think both the Strat and the Les Paul went on to do okay in the guitar sales department. Thanks for watching another episode of If Guitars Could Speak. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We will see you next time.